What if Ahsoka saved Anakin on Mustafar? Let's begin today's story just after Order 66. Ahsoka and Rex give their fallen 501st soldiers a proper burial and funeral. They weren't the evil soldiers that Palpatine turned them into. They were deceived, just like the Jedi. As Ahsoka and Rex looked upon their fallen helmets with sadness, neither of them blamed the soldiers. Ahsoka was particularly upset, but her worries had been externalized across the galaxy. She thought of Anakin and if he was okay. When she was on the bridge of the Venator Star Destroyer, she sensed that something horrible had happened. This was the moment he turned to the dark side. But as she stood before the fallen soldiers, her mind was hit again. She sensed Anakin in massive amounts of pain he had never felt before. His agony rushed onto her. She felt as though her limbs had been broken and she was burning alive. She had to go to him, to save him. As she ponders on Anakin, she senses the lava planet Mustafar. He must be there. She tells Rex that she has to go and check something out, but she will be in contact. Rushing to her ship, she leaves the planet, entering hyperspace. She arrives at the Travis system, where she can see the volcanic explosions of Mustafar. She finds the nearest landing platform and stops the ship. Closing her eyes, she reaches out with the Force to find Anakin, allowing the Force to guide her actions. In this story, we are going to assume that Ahsoka was able to get to Mustafar before Palpatine did, so that she can save her old master. Ahsoka is taken to the lava bank, where Obi-Wan sliced Anakin to the ground, leaving him for dead. Anakin was going in and out of consciousness, so Ahsoka didn't bother to speak to him. She just focused on saving his life. She picks him up with the Force and quickly places him aboard her ship as they descend the planet for a medical bay. Ahsoka was completely shocked that her master was still alive. This level of darkness would have killed almost anyone. Little did she know, he was using the dark side to cling onto life. Ahsoka would do the most logical thing in this situation. Call Obi-Wan and tell him that Anakin is wounded and in need of immediate medical care. At this point, Ahsoka didn't realize the severity of the situation she was in. She didn't know the Jedi Order had fallen, that Obi-Wan was responsible for Anakin's state, and that they were the last Jedi in the galaxy. She also wasn't aware that Anakin was responsible for all of this destruction. Obi-Wan was currently at Polis Muster with Master Yoda. Padme Amidala has just passed, and they were discussing the future of the children. Obi-Wan and Yoda looked at each other as they wondered what to tell the young Togruta. As the scene cuts back to Mustafar, Palpatine's ship arrives and he searches for Anakin, sensing he was in danger. He was becoming increasingly agitated. For over a decade, he had groomed his successor to be the most powerful Sith Lord in history, and on his first day, he was seemingly gone. Palpatine came to the conclusion that Obi-Wan had taken him. It was the only plausible scenario. He could still sense Lord Vader's presence in the Force, and he knew that he wasn't dead. Sidious always knew that Kenobi didn't have the courage to end his own apprentice. As Sidious thought about this, his heart rate began to increase. He never comprehended how much of an issue Obi-Wan would be. He had killed his first apprentice, Darth Maul, defeated General Grievous, and now finished his prized pupil in Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine turns back and goes to his ship. In this story, he would travel to the planet in mourning, Naboo, believing there to be a small chance of Anakin's appearance at Padme's funeral. As we cut back to the Jedi, Obi-Wan and Yoda deem it necessary to tell Ahsoka everything. He explains how Anakin turned to the dark side, destroyed the Jedi Temple and every single Jedi within. The Jedi Order had fallen, but arguably the most important piece of information in the galaxy at this point was that Anakin was now the widowed father of twins. Ahsoka felt herself go numb. She didn't think this was even possible. No one did. She looks back at Anakin, her feelings conflicted. Ahsoka and Padme were close friends, and the thought of her death made her stomach turn. Ahsoka couldn't believe what she was hearing. The person they were describing was not the master who raised her. Obi-Wan then explains that he was the one that struck Anakin down on Mustafar, believing him to be dead. He had become a very great threat. Tears began to stream down Ahsoka's face. How could have this happened? Yoda tells Ahsoka that it was the will of the Force that she saved Anakin. The Force wouldn't have reached out to her and instructed her to go to Mustafar if they didn't believe Anakin had any more to offer. Obi-Wan and Yoda tell her to take him to the medical center and begin the healing process. If she is fast, he may be able to survive. He concludes, saying that they will drop Senator Organa off on Naboo for Padme's funeral and then head straight to her position. Ahsoka was upset that she couldn't attend her friend's funeral, but Bail assured her that he would send his regards on her behalf. Ahsoka sets course for a Haven-class medical station. In her view, the only people capable of healing Anakin were the Kaminoans. And obviously, she couldn't return to Kamino, so this was her next best solution. She lands at the station and eliminates any clone that are there. She then ensures that the Kaminoans help her. They weren't evil, just smart business people, and if someone offered them the right money, they would help them. Anakin is placed into a secure room where they begin to treat him. This could be a long process. Back on Naboo, Padme's funeral began. It seemed as though the entire population of Naboo had arrived for the ceremony. Padme was loved by all, the famed Queen of Naboo and Senator. Organa was standing in the crowd, tears consuming him. She was a close friend of his, and he hadn't expected to lose her so soon. Obi-Wan and Yoda quickly gather a unit of Naboo soldiers who they know are loyal to the Jedi. Loyalty was rare nowadays, but they would need a platoon to defend the medical base. They leave at once for the Haven medical station, where Anakin and Obi-Wan currently were. As the funeral finished, Bail Organa made his way back to his ship. However, when he was alone, a dark figure emerged behind him and used the Force to knock him unconscious. He awakes in a dark room with a hooded figure in front of him. It was a furious Darth Sidious who couldn't find his apprentice. At first, Sidious gives Bail a chance to tell him where Skywalker is, but all Bail said was that he is the Senator in the Galactic Republic. He wouldn't get away with this. Sidious's patience was running thin. He needed an answer right this second. He extends his right arm forward and places it in front of Organa's face, reaching into his mind. Bail struggles for a moment or two as he feels the Dark Lord enter his mind and thoughts. Sidious asks the questions once again. Where is Anakin Skywalker? Bail then mutters that they are in the Rendelia system. Sidious exits his mind and leaves, calling for backup. The Jedi arrive at the medical base and visit Ahsoka and Anakin. Anakin was strapped down by his wrists and ankle. There was no chance of escape. He groaned at the pain of the operation. The Jedi stood outside the room, looking in as they contemplated what to do next. They decided it was best to keep the news of Padme's death a secret. They had to remain positive. They enter the room where Anakin was attempting to rest. He was in and out of consciousness. The Kaminoans had placed him in a suit to keep him alive, similar to how he needed to remain in the Vader suit. But this armor was not painful to live in. They constructed it so that he would be able to move his limbs at will and experience freedom again. His helmet only covered his neck and mouth in order to regulate his breathing, but in time, even this would be able to be removed. The Jedi began to speak to Anakin. Obi-Wan apologized and said that he had failed him. It wasn't his intention to drive him so far from the Order that he would believe turning to be his only course of action. Anakin was looking upon him with Sith eyes. He hates Obi-Wan for everything he has done to him, completely blinded by rage. But the Jedi knew if they focused on the light, they could restore his natural tint. Yoda explained to Skywalker that the Jedi were wrong. They had become too rigid and focused on politics instead of what actually mattered, and were blind to the Sith's rise in the Senate. He realized this now, but it was too late. Their dogmatic ways are what led to their downfall. He blamed no one but himself. Ahsoka took a different approach with Anakin, telling him the story of the Siege of Mandalore. Back when she was his apprentice, they loved to tell each other stories of their campaigns and missions. It was what bonded and brought them together. She explained the duel between herself and Maul, and how she managed to defeat him using the acrobatic move he taught her back on Cato Nemoidia. She focused on the good times, the times when they laughed and enjoyed each other's company. Ahsoka began to smile as she recalled Rex's first experience in command, but how he ensured victory for him. At this moment, Anakin's eyes began to flicker between light and dark, and they could tell that it was working. Obi-Wan stared directly into Anakin's eyes, and what he was about to say would change everything. He tells him that Padme gave birth to their children. They had twins. Anakin was shocked and asked if he was serious. This was the first time he had spoken since they arrived. His eyes had completely shifted back to normal. Tears began to stream down his face. He asked where Padme was. He needed to see her. The Jedi thought it was best to not tell him about her death quite yet. It would be too much to handle. They avoid the question and say that she is recovering in another room. Anakin didn't pry. He slumped back in his chair and was just relieved that he hadn't killed her on the Mustafar platform. Kenobi felt his heart ache. He hated lying to Anakin, but knew it was the best course of action for now. He asked the Jedi what they were called. Yoda replied that he had a son named Luke and a daughter named Leia. Anakin let out a chuckle. Those were the names they had decided a long time ago. The Jedi comforted him. Ahsoka was excited and believed that Anakin had returned to the light for good, but they needed to be cautious. However, just as they spoke to Anakin, alarms began to sound throughout the station, and a Naboo soldier rushed in and said they were under attack. They told Anakin to stay put. They would handle this. But as Obi-Wan and Yoda left, Ahsoka secretly loosened his restraints, looking into his eyes and whispering, "If you decide to help us, you can." The entrance to the base was flooded with stormtroopers as they fired at the Naboo soldiers. They were outnumbered 3-1, but still fought with courage. Sidious emerged into the station, followed close behind by the 6th brother, 9th sister, and the Grand Inquisitor. They ignite their crimson lightsabers and attack the Jedi. This was the most important duel of the generation. Whichever side won would determine who rules the galaxy. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan fight the Inquisitors, whilst Yoda rematches Sidious. The Inquisitorius was something Palpatine had planned for some time now, and he had been secretly grooming the Grand Inquisitor for his role. They fought with ferocity, attempting to kill the Jedi, but Obi-Wan was the master of Sorsu, and therefore got to defend for as long as possible. Ahsoka leaped around the room, using her lightsaber to block and attack simultaneously. Together, Tano and Kenobi uses the Force to knock the 9th sister to the wall unconscious as they continue to fight the rest. Sidious and Yoda had already done this lightsaber duel before, and they knew that neither of them would defeat the other. Sidious puts his saber up his sleeve and blasts lightning at the green monster, attempting to burn him alive. But Yoda could withstand the lightning with his fingertips. They were stuck in a stalemate. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan would be able to pierce the defenses of the 6th brother and kill him, but just as they thought they had an advantage over the Grand Inquisitor, the 9th sister returns. This duel was long and difficult, but eventually Sidious would be able to knock Yoda to the floor with the Force. Sidious then throws his lightsaber across the room and helps the Inquisitors knock the Jedi to the floor. They were beaten, and it seemed as though all hope was lost. The Jedi look around the room and see the Naboo soldiers drop their blasters and place their hands above their heads. Sidious cackled, laughing at the notion of the Jedi defeating them. But just as he mocked the light side, a ship crashes into the medical base and 5 clone troopers emerge. Captain Rex located the Bad Batch and had arrived to the rescue. They fired at the stormtroopers and told the Naboo soldiers to stand back up. The fight wasn't over yet. Sidious snarled, but still raised his saber above his head to end the Grandmaster Yoda. As he goes to end the Jedi's life, he becomes interrupted as the 9th sister's neck snaps out of nowhere. They all look behind them to see Anakin marching towards them, using the Force to conjure the 9th sister's lightsaber and ignite it. The Jedi stand to their feet. Anakin looks at them and apologizes, but hopes he can make things right. They engage with the Sith and continue to fight. This time, it wouldn't last long. The droids have made their repairs to Anakin, giving him a new suit that he can operate in. He swings his blade at full speed, testing out his new power. He was a force to be reckoned with, and although he may never reach his full potential, his brute strength had increased. Before long, the Grand Inquisitor would lose his head. Now the Emperor was left to fend for himself against Anakin Skywalker, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. He defended as best as he could, but eventually Anakin would land the finishing strike and kill Emperor Palpatine. The Bad Batch and Rex were able to lead the Naboo soldiers to victory against the Stormtroopers. Their nightmare was finally over. The Jedi would go back to Coruscant, where they would speak to the Galactic Senate. They said that Palpatine was dead and provided the necessary evidence to prove this. Much of this evidence came from Anakin, who over the last few days had enough conversations with Palpatine that proved he was the Sith Lord, and on multiple occasions admitted to leading the Separatists and beginning the Clone Wars. No one could dispute this. Enough senators despised the creation of the Empire, and before it grew too powerful, they voted to return back to the Republic, holding the next set of Supreme Chancellor elections. The Jedi began the slow process of rebuilding after their catastrophic defeat. Kenobi sent out another alert that all remaining Jedi across the galaxy can return to Coruscant. The Empire has been defeated. Before long, more Jedi returned than they thought would, and they were able to construct the Jedi Temple again and use the holocrons to find Jedi younglings who would become the next generation of Jedi. Yoda reassessed the Jedi Code and made changes where he saw fit so that the issues that plagued the Last Order wouldn't destroy this one. As for Anakin, he would be told of Padme's death and would be inconsolable. He berated Obi-Wan for this, asking how he could lie to him like this. He directed his anger towards the Jedi, but inside, it was towards himself, as he knew he was the one who killed his wife. Although the Chosen One had returned to the light, he wanted nothing to do with the Jedi. He had completely failed his children and Padme, allowing her to die. Anakin wanted to break away from it. The Jedi, the Sith, all it's done and taken away from him. But now, he has hope. He has his children. Anakin would take Luke and Leia and leave Coruscant, vowing to never return. He takes them to the lake house on Naboo, where he and Padme had promised to raise them. He became the father he always knew he could be, and raised his children in honor of his late wife. Anakin would never get over her death, but he would accept it and live with the fact that he had to ensure his children's safety. This was his goal now. There was no Jedi or Sith, there was only his children, and keeping them safe. If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch What If Ahsoka went to Mustafar instead of Obi-Wan, and what if Anakin had the high ground? Please consider becoming a member for $1 a month. Your support will be greatly appreciated. I hope you all enjoyed, and may the Force be with you.